Hey guys, what's going on this special edition? On this episode, we're talking about reviewing gear on a painting. I think that's what we're doing. I got a special guest, the painter, Green Beret artist, Mac with Prairie Fire Art Company. And he brought along this beautiful gift of mine, an amazing piece of art and tribute to the Iraqi counterterrorism force and all their hard work in collaboration with American Special Forces downrange. What a beautiful piece, man. How long did this take you to make?
This took about a month, yeah.
Like a month straight? Like
a month straight.
24 hours, no sleep?
All the time, no sleep. And then, it takes a couple weeks to varnish and get it framed and stuff like that. So a month and a half altogether.
This thing scares the crap out of me because it looks so expensive. It looks like it belongs in a museum, but you'll be seeing it in the background of the Mike Force podcast. I'm not even going to allow myself to put my hands on it. I'm gonna make Mac carry it back to the house and put it on that wall because I don't want to mess this thing up. It's beautiful. But we're talking about gear, and when we do gear reviews, I want to talk about specific kit, the evolution of that kit, and why we used it especially, and how it correlates to your kit considerations as a civilian or a military or law enforcement guy. But man, what I already noticed in analyzing everything in this picture is it's so accurate. How did you get it so accurate?
So it started with our conversation, right? And you've got some great photos that we were able to kind of go through together and talk about what you guys were using at the time, that 06, 07, 08 timeframe in Iraq and Baghdad and elsewhere. So I started with that. Also was fortunate enough to have some other friends who were really helpful, who were there at the time as well. So we kind of talked and compared notes about what different guys were using. Was fortunate enough to speak to some ICTF guys themselves, veterans who are here now in the United States, our friends, and find out like what was peculiar to their kit, what did they remember as being important, and then I just started to kind of piece it together. You know what I mean? I've got some good resources who collect this stuff, and so I was able to access it and find it and kind of put things together for photo shoots that then were used as references for the drawing and then the painting.
There's a Prairie Fire podcast as well as a Fieldcraft Survival podcast on the details of that and his process. I think it's pretty awe-inspiring that it's just so detailed and Nat's ass accurate. There's no half-assing here. Let's start with the uniforms because what you'll notice right out the gate is this uniform is different than this guy, and then he's got the same uniform here. You put an Iraqi and Lithuanian soft uniforms with at the time, this is probably 06, 07 time period, before Cry Precision really was a thing in soft. I mean, they were R&Ding and doing certain aspects of it, but our unit certainly didn't have them. We were cutting custom shirts. But why'd you do the breakdown of Lithuanian versus desert camo in this particular picture?
So it was actually a conversation I had with Kevin Owens. We were talking about some of the details here. And we were talking about how to accurately portray ICTF guys mixed in the stack with USASOC. Didn't want it to just be an SF-centric painting. I wanted it to be something that showed the ISOF partner force equally. So we broke it down to have equal representation in the stack. We also, I wanted to show, although we know that this is a stack that's flowing into the target, we see as the first figure crossing the doorway that we see clearly in this picture being Iraqi himself, right? So that was kind of important to show that position in the timeline where the Iraqi guys themselves are starting to take over that mission, like we talk about in the podcast. And so I talked to some of the guys who had been there at the time, and they said Lithuanians were 100% what they were wearing. And then, although there were obviously, like you've talked about, moments when the U.S. Special Forces were wearing the Lithuanian camo as well, I wanted to show the contrast so we can quickly identify who's who. And so certainly this is capturing a moment where Green Berets are wearing that tricolor desert uniform that we know from that time frame so well, and then we're seeing the Lithuanian, which is super special.
Yeah, the last, I think, Eagles and Angels run I'm doing of the uniforms is an ICTF uniform that I used during a hostage rescue in Najaf, Iraq. I like the fact that it's we're going in together. I mean, that's how we did it as a partner force. And the Iraqis look just like Americans. They're big, corn-fed Iraqis that are just like the ICTF Americans that were working with them, and you really couldn't tell the difference. It's not like Yemen, even Afghanistan, where indigenous forces, depending on where they're from in the country, could be really small people. These dudes are big. I mean, they look like us, look like operators. They had the same culture too. They had tats, they had all kinds of stuff. It was cool. But I love the breakdown of the uniforms, and when I see the kit, it's exactly the type of kit we were using, which I think was a combination of Paraclete and Eagle at the time. And I want to say that the ICTF guys were using Eagle. Is that Eagle?
That resonates with me. That's kind of what the photographic evidence from that sort of suggested. So that's what I went with. And the models that I posed were in a mix of Eagle and Paraclete stuff. Yeah, just because of what you said.
Yeah, moving on to the weapon systems. As a Special Forces weapons guy, I should know better. I'm always looking at weapons and nomenclature. I used to be really into it. But I could tell you right now that's the exact same setup that we used. This is before Magpul was even a thing, because Magpul, we didn't have Magpul mags. We're using aluminum mags with green followers, and they were super reliable, but there were issues with them. That they were lightweight, unlike the HK416 mags, which were steel mags, which were super heavy. Before Magpul, we had basic mil-spec buttstocks from the SOP mod issue, which is like all the SOP mod accessories, which included a 6-inch RAS rail that was a heat guard with Picatinny adapter, which is crazy because now if you put a heat guard or heat shield that had Picatinny rail, you would lose your stuff because you're like, well, I can't hold a 0 because it moves. And they did move. So this PAC 2 Alpha right here that's mounted on our stuff, just like all the pictures you see me with PAC 2 Alphas, they weren't the truest 0s because it was on a heat shield, not an actual rail system that was integrated where they couldn't move. Mm-hmm. In fact, in my 07 rotation, I pulled them all off because I wanted more rail space to get the accessory, which was the SOP mod issue. You had 6 inches of rail space and you had a crap ton of accessories. You didn't have enough room to put it on that little 6 inches. Surefire Light, same thing with the broom handles. Everybody was rocking broom handles pretty much back then. I C-clamped my gun at the time. Ran a broomstick in Afghanistan, but C-clamped my gun so I could activate the button on my PAC 2 Alpha. And that's definitely a Knight's Armament suppressor, which were really crappy. They've improved, but that specific suppressor was not that good. And it was so heavy, like super heavy. EOTechs, that is the model, I think it's 551 or something like that. The long EOTech that took the double A's. Mm-hmm. Comms and Peltors is really good. That's really accurate because those guys always love their knee pads. Mm-hmm. Lastly, the specific night vision, you differentiate PVS-15s from 7 Deltas. I don't remember the ICTF running anything besides 7 Deltas that we gave them. They might have been running 14s at one time, a section of them, but most of it was 7 Deltas, which is 2 eyes looking into 1 Coke straw, and not the best for CQB or warfighting at all, especially driving, because I've driven a lot with Iraqis, two objectives, and it's not that fun. What is this overall depicting in this specific scene of action? What is that?
So at this moment, you're seeing the stack, right? You're seeing these guys flow into their target building, all right? And now they maybe have come from a previous contact in a different part of the compound, but here they're flowing through a breach point. And it was important, I thought, to capture that sort of dramatic energy, that moment when they're rushing. And it's like violent, right? It's quick. It's not something where everyone's kind of like cautiously sort of, tiptoeing towards the door. It's a quick push through that doorway, which of course, there's inevitably gonna be some danger on the other side.
What's really cool about this, besides its ICTF and the commanders and extremist force working together, it has a lot to do with the story behind my experience in ICTF, the documentary we're doing, and what's even cooler is you can get this print for a limited time with specific traits attached to it in the links below. If you want this print, find out all the context and all the history behind that print. So when it's hanging on your wall and somebody comes over, you could tell that story. That's how we keep this legacy alive. That's how we keep people's names, the sacrifice these men made, alive. And that's my favorite part of this whole thing. The Prairie Fire Podcast has a lot of those details. Fieldcraft Survival's podcast with Mac has a lot of those details. And most certainly, you buy that print below. Support starving artists like Mac. I heard he's hungry right now. We'll go feed him. Amazing details and great job on this. A testament to your art skills, but also I think your special operations background to put it all together.
Well, Mike, thank you. This is your story. I wanted to tell it. I'm glad it turned out the way it did, and I'm excited for people to be able to share in the story.
This is by far the best gift I've ever received. No offense to gifters. Just level up, man. Next year, give me better gifts. This is going to be the coolest thing. And the backdrop for the Mike Force podcast, if you haven't subscribed to that, I'll make John add another link below. So just fish through everything. Hit the notification tab, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you check out all of Mac's channels. He's on Instagram. It's Prairie Fire Art Co.
Yep.
On Instagram. Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
We'll see you guys. Hey, guys. So if you're watching this, this print is now available with signatures from the artist Mac as well as myself on this historic event telling the story of the Iraqi counterterrorism force. So just sign this one. I'm going to move over to this one. The bonus for this is, I don't know how egotistical this is, but you get a self-portrait of myself that's hand-drawn by the artist, which I think is a cool complementary piece to this history. This is taken from the painting in a print form that you could frame and put in your house and home and keep these men's legacy alive, the brave men of the Iraqi counterterrorism force, as well as a bonus for this, at the same cost that you normally would get it, signed by myself and the artist. It's a limited offer, as well as proceeds of the profit going to the documentary of telling this amazing and epic story of the Iraqi counterterrorism force and all their history working with U.S. Army Special Forces Green Berets. So thanks, guys.